Good dinner of Shabbos, Parshas, Pinchas, Tavshin Pevav. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a wonderful week. This week's shir is graciously dedicated by Yoel and Rachel Newstead of Suffern, New York. L'zchus a shidduch for the very Gittel Vas Golda, as well as by my dear friend Yax and Ariella Kushner of Farakwe, New York. Lo the Nishmas, Reb Avram Tzvi ben Reb Shmuel, and Reb Ben Zion ben Reb Zalman Mordechai. Yax, Mazel Tov on your baby. May everything be beautiful of his mana. May have nachas from the Rachanimo and all of your children. So this week is a loaded parsha. Begins with Pinchas, and a lot to talk about on Pinchas and the Bris Shalom with Karbanis. But for this parsha, I don't think we've ever focused on the episode of Benois Tzlavchad. What happened was the daughters of Tzlavchad came to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they wanted their father's chalukah, his nachla in Eretz Yisrael, and they said, Avinu meis b'midbar v'huloya b'seicha'ida noyadim al Hashem badas korach. They came to Moshe and they said, our father died, Tzlavchad died, and he wasn't part of the revolt against with Korach. And Rashi says that it was only because of his own chatam that he died. Ki v'chetoi meis u'banav l'hoyloi, didn't have any sons, and they came to Moshe Rabbeinu with a very simple, straightforward shayla. They wanted his portion, they wanted his nachla, they wanted the land, but there were no sons. So it was a hilchas yerusha shayla. They came to Moshe Rabbeinu, and we find something very, very interesting that the Mefarshim point out. What's Moshe Rabbeinu's response? Avinu meis v'hu lo yeheh b'teicha ida lama yigara. They say, why should we lose out? Why shouldn't we get a chance? Why shouldn't we get a portion? Why shouldn't we inherit him? And what was Moshe Rabbeinu's response? Moshe Rabbeinu was the Gadol Dar. He was the Tzaddik. He was the Managadar. He was greater than anyone who ever lived. He was greater than the Chafetz Chaim, than Reb Kiva Eger, than Chassam Sofer, than the biggest Paisik in the world, than Reb Elyashiv, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, the Shagasari, you name it. Moshe Rabbeinu, Tanaim, or Reb Kiva, or Reb Shmuel, or Reb Beir, Reb Yehuda, all the Tanaim, Moshe Rabbeinu. Greater than the Rashbi, all of them put together, Moshe Rabbeinu. They were asking him a simple shayla. We're girls, there's no boy, and we want the Yerusha. So, can we be Yerusha father? Can you get the land? And what does Moshe Rabbeinu respond? He says, I don't know. Vayakriv Moshe es mishpat l'fnei Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu brought the shayla. He had to escalate the shayla to the Rebbeinu Shalom. In fact, in Mefarshim, what's going on here? This is a very straightforward hilchas nachlas, hilchas Yerusha shayla. It's not a brain surgery. This isn't so complex. And even if it was, Moshe Rabbeinu should be able to address. He should be able to give proper hadracha and psak to the shayla. Why on earth is Moshe Rabbeinu going to the Rebbeinu Shalom? Vayakriv Moshe es mishpatan l'fnei Hashem with some super complicated, intricate shayla that even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't answer. Is Zilchas Yerusha. Yeah, the answer is there's no sons. You give it to the daughters. How do we understand? Why is Moshe Rabbeinu? We have to understand the pasuk. Vayakriv Moshe es mishpatan l'fnei Hashem. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu bringing the shayla to the Bezdin Shalmaila, to the heavenly courts? Figure out yourself, you know the answer. So there's a beautiful pshat from the Kotzker. The Kotzker says that Moshe Rabbeinu was very much confronted with a serious shayla. Why? Because on the one hand, Chazal tell us in Shabbos, Kol ma'anig es ha-Shabbos noisim loy nachla b'li mitzarim. On the one hand, Moshe Rabbeinu said, we shouldn't give the Yerusha. Why? Because the Gemara in Shabbos tells us that anyone who is ma'anig, anyone who is mechab the Shabbos, only to such a person we give an inheritance. We give Eretz Yisrael b'li mitzvah without any rules, without any sort of shayla. We give him an achla in Eretz Yisrael. But the problem is that Rebbe Kiva teaches us in Shabbos that who was Tzlavchad? Tzlavchad was the Mekoshish. He was the one that was Mechal Shabbos. So on the one hand, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I can't give the land to his daughters because their father doesn't deserve it. Their father forfeited his nachla in Eretz Yisrael because he was Mekoshish on Shabbos. He was Mechal Shabbos. He publicly defamed and desecrated Shabbos in front of the entire assembly. So how can we give him a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael? That was one side of the shayla. B'zak the Kotzker, on the other hand, the Rishalmi tells us that Tzlavchad, we know, was L'Shem Shemayim. I think Rashi quotes it. It's a medrash that he had good intentions. He wanted to teach Klal Yisrael that Hashem, there's taka din v'cheshbon, there's you do and there's repercussions. There's not just a free-for-all. It's not just laissez-faire, do whatever you want and Hashem's not going to know. It's not the Wild West. There's consequences for our actions. There's points and balances. And Tzlafchad, his intention of being Mechal Shabbos, he gave up his life. He was a big tzaddik. He gave up his life. He was Moshe Nefesh to teach the entire Klal Yisrael that if you do something, there's severe repercussions. And he wanted to show Klal Yisrael just that. His intentions were very much Lishmal L'Shem Shamayim. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu had another shayla that despite the fact, he was Mechal Shabbos, but he was L'Shem Shamayim also. He had good intentions. His heart was all for Shamayim. His heart was lit on fire. His mamash being Moshe Nefesh v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu was the most beautiful Heilig Gezach. We hear about stories about people that were Moshe Nefesh in the Holocaust, L'Shem Shamayim. That was Slavcha too. He was giving up his life for the Rebbeinu Shalom. Eilcha Kiddush Hashem Gadol Mizeh. Pretty compelling shayla. So he gave up his lot because he was Mekoshesh, desecrated Shabbos, but at the same time, his heart was on fire, flaming with dveikas, flaming with Ratzon Hashem. He wanted to show Klal Yisrael that Hashem is legitimate, that Hashem is real, that there's a real connection, that there's a real consequence when we do something. Hashem really cares, and Hashem punishes sometimes, but Hashem also gives reward. And that's what Tzlafchad wanted to teach. So Moshe Rabbeinu, his uncertainty was, he didn't know how to pass on the shayla because this was something that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could determine, because only Hashem is B'yichin Levavis. Only Hashem could discern the true feelings, the true intentions, the true mindset and thoughts behind the heart. B'yichin Levavis. Hashem is the only one that can do that. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu had to be Vayakov Moshe Mishpat Lefnei Hashem Zak Tekatzker. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't equipped. Moshe Rabbeinu, as great as he wasn't a malach. He was a regular human being. He was a basar v'dam, and he couldn't know really how to assess. He did not know how to determine the emes la'amitai over here, the truth of truths, because the heart isn't something that he can see. Yes, it was a known thing that he did L'Shem Shemaim, but to know how far they went, how true, how deep, what the level of conviction was there, and what his true thoughts were, that only is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu determine. And that's why it says the Kotzker, this was the Shaila, this was the back and forth. This was why Moshe Rabbeinu himself, although he's the greatest person, but his uncertainty had to be paskined by the Bezdin Shalmaila. That's Azoizak the Kotzker. However, there's another pshat. This pshat is a pshat based on a Maisa with the Pinchas Chinuch. What happened was that Pinchas Chinuch lived in a place called Tarnopol, and there were two community members that came to the Pinchas Chinuch with the Shaila. They had a monetary dispute, and during the court case, Pinchas Chinuch was one paskening, and one of the litigants, one of the people there, one of the Balei Dinim, casually mentioned, he said, by the way, my father, his Masada Kedushin was done by your father, by the Pinchas Chinuch's father. And right then and there, the Pinchas Chinuch said, I'm out, I'm done, I can't pass on the Shaila. Even though he was the Pinchas Chinuch himself, and he was the Av Bezdin, he said, I can't paskin, I'm disqualified from taking this case. And they were confused. What's going on? Okay, so your father was Masada Kedushin. What's the big deal? And the Pinchas Chinuch said, the reason why I can't pass in this case is because I have a bias, because now I have some sort of connection towards you. He explained, he said, I'm concerned that even this slight connection could unconsciously affect my view, my objectivity of the case. And I have to be completely unbiased, I have to be completely fair. And if there's any sort of connection to you, it's not fair to the other litigant. So they said, like, did this come up in halacha, that this small nuance, this small thing, that although you're going to pass on yourself, you're going to disqualify yourself as a bezdin, as a rav to preside on the case? And the Pinchas Chinuch said that he learned this halacha not necessarily from Shulchan Aruch, but from Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Because after hearing that the daughters of Tzlafchad, what did they say? they described themselves, says the Pinchas Chinuch, they said, he wasn't. The daughters of Slavcha said, our father Slavcha, he wasn't part of the revolt. He wasn't against Moshe Rabbeinu. So the second Moshe Rabbeinu heard that he didn't participate in Korach's rebellion, right then and there, says Pinchas Chinuch, Moshe was concerned that even this favorable information about their father could even subtly influence his judgment. And rather than rely on his own psak, on his own logic, says the Pinchas Chinuch, that was the reason of Vayakrev Moshe as mishpat l'fnei Hashem, because there was a shemet, there was a small mashu of a chashash that maybe the situation, maybe this small information is going to jade, it's going to distort the emes la'amita. And because of that, that says Pinchas Chinuch was the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu went to Hashem, because he didn't want the fact that he thought, Tzavcha was a big tzaddik, that's going to take away from the emes la'amita of the halacha, and that's why Vayakrev Moshe as mishpat l'fnei Hashem. That's why he went to the Eibishter himself, because Moshe Rabbeinu felt that he had a little bit of bias, and that was going to ruin, that was going to change, that was going to distort his objectivity, and because he wanted only the emes, he was afraid that was going to conflict, that was going to ruin that pureness, straight to the emes. And that's why only the Eibishter would be able to handle this case. What does this tell us? I think what we can learn from this Pinchas Chinuch is that there's not just a lesson in how to be a bezdin and bias and ruining objectivity, but there's something we find in the Torah, that we naturally feel closer to people that are a part of our families, our immediate friends. But the Torah teaches us that every Yid deserves the same care, the same concern, and the same fairness. That's what we learn from over here, that our relationships should never be determined by how much we value the other person. And just as Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't allow even the slightest personal connection to affect his judgment, the fact that he heard that Slavcha was a shtikol tzaddik because he wasn't part of Korach, the same thing is for us. We have to realize that we can't let anything get involved with our relationships with other people. Like the Pinchas Chinuch, he didn't paskin the case because he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu that there was something that got in the way of his clarity, there was something that made him feel closer to one of the Baalei Dinim than the other. We always are in a position where we're looking at others, where we're judging, we're placing different situations, and especially during these 3 weeks, and when we're trying to work on Ahavas Chinam and get rid of any sort of sinas Chinam, the yesod is for us, we have to realize that we all are very comfortable with the circle. We're always comfortable with achdus within the circle. But the question is, what about beyond the circle? What about to the people that don't necessarily fit in? What about when we do something for others and there's no noise, there's no applaud, there's no recognition? What we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, from the story of the Pinchas Chinuch, who learned from Moshe Rabbeinu, is that yes, we feel connection to certain people, but we have to work on taking everyone into consideration, everyone even outside of the circle, everyone out of our comfort zone. That's what Ahavas Chinam is all about. Ahavas Chinam, it's free love. Just because I'm not only going to be nice to you because you're my friend, because you did something for me, because I owe you something. I'm going to look out of the circle. I'm going to exercise my midas arachmanis, my midas of being a meitiv, just like Debishter Mahu Rachum Afatachanun. He's a Rachaman, he's a Bal Chesed. We too have to be the same thing. And that means that it's unbound, that it's ceaseless. It means it goes everywhere. It means that we do whatever we can to try to help Yanim, to try to see the person who isn't getting attention, to try to see the person who everyone isn't running after to do Chesed. That is what we can learn from this Maisa with the Pinchas Chinuch, that he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu, that he felt this nantkeit, he felt this closeness with one of the litigants, and he said, I have to disqualify myself as a judge on the case because there's someone else over here. He's out of my circle. And because he's out of my circle, I'm afraid that my psak is going to interfere and not going to be in favor of him. Us too, we're always in a situation where we have to think beyond. We have to think about the feelings, the true feelings of other people, not just those that are close to us. Work to be nice to them, to be kind to them, and always remember that as comfortable as we are with our inner circle, and we have to be nice to that inner circle, the friends, the family, our neighbors, our community. But the Torah wants a little bit more. The Torah wants us to think. Think about your circle around you, and then realize that by the Torah, by the Eibishter, real chesed, real achdus, doesn't end where the line of your circle is drawn. That's really where it only begins. Because true chesed starts after your circle is drawn. Outside is only where it begins. Maybe zeiche to take in this message that we learn from the Minchas Chinuch based on the story of the Bnei Slavchad, tucked away over here in Hilchos Yerusha, and remind ourselves the importance, the Amech Kulam Tzadikim, the beauty, the heiligkeit of every single Yid. Hashem wants us taking care of everyone. Hashem wants us taking everyone in mind and in consideration, doing whatever we can for everyone. And in that tzchus, in the merit of exercising, of going against our teva and looking out for everyone. It's very hot outside. There's so many different opportunities to help other people, to look out, to do chesed. The list is endless. Someone just said yesterday, there are people after the break fast, they're singles or the divorced people that don't have, just think about other people. Maybe it'd be better for them if they were sitting with your family. Don't make all your cheshbainis. They're not going to want to be with us. Think who's lost. Think who can use chizik. Think who can use the Good Shabbos text. Think who can use the invite. Think who can use a good smile outside of your circle. Maybe someone needs a chavrusa shaf. Maybe a couple minutes a day, a week, or something. There's endless opportunities. Hashem gave us a mind to think, to be creative. And when we do that, and we create for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, may Hashem create the third Beis HaMikdash, the long-awaited temple that we've been bereft of, that we so badly need, when we Yeshuas and the Chamas and the arrival of Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'meir v'amenu, Amen. A good Shabbos.